Well, I'd like to know who the youngest father is out there. So if you have a son or a daughter that is 1 year old or less, would you stand up? Do we have any with a son or a daughter 1 year old or less? How about 2 years old? This is like auctioning, isn't it now? 3 years old. Oh, we got a bunch. Okay, great. Stay standing. So how old is your youngest here? They're twins. Okay, they win. All right. So can she handle both of those, or do you need to bring one with you? Okay, really? You're going to help, Sig, because I got something special for you. Oh, that might, yeah, well, you know, and if he needs to come join us, because I got some, excellent. I got an important question for you, all right? Do you like pie?
That's it, yes.
You do?
Yes.
Do you like homemade pie?
Yes.
Then you're going to love this. Here. Grab this chair. We'll put it right over here. This table, all right? Put it right here. Now, I want you to have a seat, okay? Now, this is not just any old pie. This is my wife's pie. This is a blueberry peach pie. Check that out. What do you think, okay? How about we create a little ambiance here, huh? You know, is that good? That's good. All right, now let me serve you a slice of pie right here. Did you have breakfast this morning? A little. Well, you're having a little more right now, okay? So there's your pie. May I have a slice? Oh, thanks. I'll just have this little one right here. Okay? So, Lord, bless this pie. Shall we dig in? And I want to know how you like it. And you have 2 sons, and they're both twins. How old are they?
Just over 2.
Wow. What do you think? That's amazing pie. It is amazing pie. I think I'd like a little bit more. Do you think your family would like that pie?
I think they would love this pie.
Well, they're going to be taking it home. But I want you to keep eating that for just a moment here, because I want to let everybody know what most already know, and that is, this is a series on community. Community is about coming together, and it just so happens this in our 4th in our 5-part series is about, well, the sermon title is, what is the sermon title? Let's eat! Perfect! So we're eating and you're enjoying, and you want to take that with you? That would be great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that because I want your boys to have you right next to them. Now there's one condition. All right? You ready? The condition is that you enjoy this, but not alone. In the community of your family, or any others that may grab it on your way back to your seat, okay? Go ahead and have a seat. Pie. Yeah, this series is really born out of Acts chapter 2, verse 42, where it says the early Christian community was continually devoting themselves to 4 things that are mentioned in that verse, at least, and that is the apostles' teaching. We had a sermon on that. And to fellowship last week, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Well, next week will be prayer, but this is the breaking of bread. Now, some would interpret that to mean communion. And communion was certainly celebrated in the early Christian community in the context of a greater meal. But in this case, in the context, what we find following that verse, verse 42, it says, they were breaking bread from house to house, taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Probably because people wanted to be a part of that good thing that was going on. Food. Let's eat. That's what the Jews would say every festival time, and they would look forward to it. The first reading in Deuteronomy was addressing some of those, not all of them, those feast days. Notice what they're called. The Feast of Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Pentecost we just celebrated a couple of weeks ago, the Feast of Atonement, the feast, lots of feasts. And they would not just feast for an hour, a couple hours in the evening, or even a day. They would feast for a whole week. It was a gala time. It was wonderful. It brought people together. And so all of the religious traditions that we have in Judaism, we see revolving around food. So I think, well, let's eat. Why not? I mean, I don't know about you now in your generation, but an old guy like me and maybe some of the other old folks out there grew up oftentimes around the dinner table at night in the evening with your family. And on Sunday it was with our grandparents and the family, and it was wonderful all together. Now, when I was about 18 or so, my sister had a best friend. Her name was Dawn. She's now my wife, and she was just a 14, 15-year-old kid. And she came to our house a lot. And I noticed her a lot, even though I was much older, but relatively speaking at that time, I noticed her. And she actually lived in our home for a while, so she experienced what it was like to have family, because my wife didn't have that kind of a family experience. So when we got married years later, we decided we're going to do more of this. And so we do the hospitality thing a lot. We have people into our home. Many of you do that. We just had some into our home from the congregation a couple of nights ago. That is just a wonderful experience. We've continued to do that throughout my military career. In fact, on my second assignment to Germany, I was the hospital chaplain in Heidelberg, so we opened up the Heidelberg Hospitality House. And it was almost all young people who were single, in their 20s or so, and we had this little place on the German economy, and we would have them over for dinner and fellowship, and all of that is involved in Acts 2:42. And sometimes we would have about 50 of them over there. 50. My wife had to cook for a long time to get that many fed, because they eat a lot, and so they were coming, they were cleaning up and setting up, and they were a part. It was a communal experience, and we're very engaged with them. We became like surrogate parents, not very much unlike Monty. Monty is like a surrogate father, are you not? Look, he's got his little groupies over there. The midshipman choir that Monty, for 20 years, he's been playing music, and he has been inviting this single dad, if you will, single man with a lot of folks that come over, especially from the choir, and you serve them or they serve one another, and you're all together. Is that important, Monty? Has that built community? In a little way or a big way? Huge way, huge way. So let's eat more, but let's eat together. I'm wondering, because the Father of all, God is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. Well, he's the Father of fathers, and he has sent his Son to us. But as the Son, was he like a father to us too on the earth? Did he ever behave that way? Did he ever serve dinner to his own? I thought about that, and then boom, popped into my head. Oh, yes, of course. The last chapter in John's Gospel. It's wonderful. Let me give you a background for just a moment. Jesus has risen from the dead, and he has appeared to 10 of the apostles. Of course, Judas Iscariot took his own life. He was not there, obviously, but Thomas wasn't either. So he appeared to them, and before he appeared to them, before his resurrection, he said that they would be filled with the Holy Spirit. When the promise of the Father came upon them, that they would be filled. He said that after he was resurrected as well. So then 8 days later, Thomas wasn't there on that occasion, but it's 8 days later, a week later, they're still in Jerusalem. Thomas is there, Jesus appears again. Well, then what? Well, then nothing. No, we don't hear about Jesus appearing again. So there they are down in Jerusalem wondering, well, what do we do next? I guess we're waiting for the Spirit to come. Nothing's happening. I guess, well, let's just go home for now. So they went back home to Galilee. That's a long journey. It's about 90 miles or so. Got up there. Well, what do you do now that you're back up there? Well, you do what you know. And one day they're up there, and Simon Peter, it says, is there, and Thomas, who is called Didymus. That word means twin. We have twins here this morning. Just met their dad. So Thomas, he has a twin. Nathanael, it says, of Cana of Galilee, which is where Jesus performed the first miracle. It's there, right there on the coastline of the Sea of Galilee. The sons of Zebedee, which would be John and James, they were there. They were fishermen, and 2 other disciples. So there's 7 of them. And Simon Peter says, I'm going fishing. And they say, well, we're going with you. And so they went out and got in the boat, and that night they caught nothing. They caught nothing. So when the day is now breaking, it says, Jesus is standing on the shore. But they did not know that it was Jesus. Now we see in the scripture that Jesus does not look as he did before the resurrection after. But he's about 100 yards away. We find that out later in the story. So there's a distance out there. So they don't know who this is, but he's standing on the shore. He calls out to them, children, you don't have any fish, do you? Don't you hate it when you know somebody lets you know what you don't have, or what you haven't done, or what you shouldn't have done and you did, whatever? Children, notice how he addresses them. Jesus, like a father would his children. Children, you don't have any fish, do you? So what are they going to say? Well, they answer with one word. No! Of course, in the scriptures, it doesn't say, what's it to you? No, they don't say that, but maybe they're thinking, no. So he says, cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find a catch. So they cast, therefore, and then it says, they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. There's so many fish, they can hardly bring it in. And it says, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who is usually referred to by most scholars and interpreters as John the Apostle. He's certainly one of those number, a fisherman himself. I like how he addresses himself, if that is in fact who he is as the writer. I'm the beloved disciple, as though the others aren't, but I'm the beloved. The beloved one says to Simon Peter, it's the Lord. Well, how does he know that? How does he know it's the Lord? It's far away. I think what's going through his mind right then is he recalls several years back. This is before Jesus even called his disciples. It's in the 5th chapter of Luke, and it says that Simon Peter and James and John have gone out fishing, and they have had a night in which they caught nothing, just like this night. So they're coming in and they're on the shore and they're washing their nets. Jesus comes up. He has this big entourage of people. He's teaching them. They're pressing him. So he asks Simon, hey, let me get in your boat. I'm going to teach them from the boat. So he gets in and he teaches them. After a while, remember, they fished all night. They didn't catch anything. Now they're accommodating him. He interrupts them while doing their work. You know, they're washing the nets. And then he says, put your boat out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. He's not a fisherman. They just fished all night. It's not the time. Anybody fish out here? Anybody like to fish? Okay. Oh, well, usually in the morning or in the evening, not now. And Simon Peter says to him, we have worked hard all night. Notice, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing. But at your bidding, we'll let down the net. Maybe Jesus was persistent. So they do. And then it says they enclosed such a great number of fish that the nets began to break. So they called their partners who came up, and they filled both boats to the point of sinking. So we got 2 boats now. Unsuccessful fishing endeavor. Filled so much they're sinking. The nets are beginning to break. And so what does Simon Peter do? He falls down before Jesus and says, depart from me, for I am a sinful man. Because he knows who he is in the presence of. This is the presence of God who is at work causing something to happen that should not have. And because he sees Jesus for who he is, he sees himself for who he is. They get into the shore, and Jesus says to them, don't be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. And he turns fishermen into fishers of men. 3 years, maybe at the most, of his ministry. He is raised from the dead. He appears to them. A little time has elapsed. They're now back home and they're fishing. They caught nothing. It's back to business as usual. And then something happens and they recall. And when Simon Peter hears from John, it's the Lord, I love his response. It says he was stripped for work, which means that, his outer garments were off. And he immediately puts his outer garment on. I have no idea why. Man, I take my clothes off and then I'm going to go in the water. But maybe he just wanted to look respectable when he got on the beach. I have no idea. But it says he put his outer garment on and immediately dove into the water. I mean, it's about a 100-meter swim, I guess, at least, and so he is on his way there. I just love the fact that it's Jesus. It registers in Simon Peter's mind just as it did in John. Oh, I've got to go to him. That's a good thing. Go to the Father. Go to the Son. He's there waiting, as in this case. It says the others came in the little boat. We got a lot of fish, man. We don't want to lose that catch. Dragging the net full of fish. They were about 100 yards out, it says. Now, listen. They get out upon the beach there, and they see a charcoal fire already laid, fish placed on it, and bread. Who did that? How many think it was Jesus? Who else? Of course. Where did he get the fish and the bread? I don't know, but it also brings to mind that time that he multiplied the loaves and the fishes. He used the little boy's food. He distributed it through his apostles. They were a part of the whole communal experience, but it was his work, not theirs. They worked and they didn't have any success. So there he has, they've come up to the beach. He's got a fire laid. Don't you like the setting? Doesn't that appeal to you? Fire laid, fish placed on it, bread. And he says, bring some of the fish which you have now caught. Which you have now caught. Yeah, they did, but not without him. Not without him. Nothing happens that is of value, lasting value, of intrinsic worth, and eternal consequence without God doing it. And sometimes he does it through us. Because that's the way a father is with his children. And he does. So he says, bring some of the fish which you now caught. So Simon Peter, of course, he's always the first one in action. He goes out, he draws the net to land, full of large fish, 153 in number. It says, it's so interesting if you go online to say, what does 153 mean? And all of these smart people out there interpreting the scriptures are coming up from ancient times even, what that all means symbolically and everything else. And maybe it does mean something like that, but me, little old me, what I think is, I think there were 153 fish. I think they saw, wow, there are so many, let's count them. And they're large. Well, there's a couple of kinds of fish like that, maybe big enough to eat, and out of the Sea of Galilee, one is called mushed. And if you go up there, as I have, and you can dine on it, it's called St. Peter's fish. It's about this big or so. It's like a perch. And it's pretty good. But it's maybe at the most a few pounds. But there's also a biny. The biny fish gets to be about 13 to 15 pounds. He's a pretty good size, like a carp, and that is used especially, it's a large fish, for Jewish festivals, for Sabbath meals. I'm convinced because it's large and what its purpose is, that's the fish they caught. So you got 7 guys, Jesus makes 8, 153 fish, maybe averaging pound, well, let's just say they weigh about 15 pounds. That's about 300 pounds of fish for 8 guys. That's enough, isn't it? Is that enough? Jesus, it kind of goes overboard, just like Simon Peter got it, and he went overboard for Jesus. God goes overboard for us, and he calls us to go overboard for him. They do. Bring some of the fish which you now have caught, as though they need more, but he wants them to be included too. So, Jesus then, there, and by the way, it says, they didn't ask him, who are you, knowing that it was the Lord. So he looks different. I like that, because you know what? He looked different to them. I don't even know what he looks like. in the flesh, but I know what he looks like in the spirit, and that's what matters. God reveals himself to us as spiritual form, and there God is present, and Jesus in his glorified state. And then it says Jesus came and gave them bread and likewise also the fish. So he not only got the grill going, put the bread on, put the fish on, he serves them. It's community. It's a communal experience. There's a richness to it. And when we do that, and people come together in the context of having a meal, fellowship happens. It's awesome, and it really doesn't cost much. So I've got an application for you. And this is for our congregation specifically. You guys, I don't know where you're going to eat today, but you are going to eat. And when you eat, make sure you eat together. Okay, when my wife, she was just on a trip last week, and when she goes, she's fearful because she knows that I don't eat when she's gone. I mean, I just don't think about it. I'm just one of those guys that don't think about it. Doesn't mean I don't like to eat. I just don't like to eat alone. I like to eat in company because it not only makes the experience that much richer, it makes the food taste better too. So here is the challenge, the application. Eat together. We are living right here outside of this magnificent historic town filled with restaurants. It is right now, oh gosh, I've got to finish up here. It's about 10 till 12. It's almost lunchtime. So perfect time to go out and eat. Go out and eat. Eat together. Eat often. Do it on Sunday. Invite others to go. Invite people you know. Invite people you don't know. Just do it and do it together. And when the midshipmen come back in great numbers, invite them out as well. When you're with other friends like yourselves, you can do it Dutch. With the midshipmen, never do it Dutch. Always pay their way, right? And do it often. So that's the application I believe God would have us do. And when we do that, when we are doing that, I think we will experience the same thing that the early church was experiencing. And by the way, it is happening. I'd just like to see it happen more here. I'd like to meet more with more. And that is, they were breaking bread together, sharing their meals with one another, house to house, experiencing fellowship, and gaining favor with all the people. And I've got to tell you, folks that come in here to visit, when they get a taste of that, no pun intended, a real taste of that, and literally and figuratively, by the way, they will want more of it, and so will you. All right?